So, hi everyone, like I said, I'm AJ Popovic, Northwest Indiana Regional Specialist for SICIM, and today I'll be presenting on invasive species, what they are and why they matter. This is meant to be kind of an introductory presentation on where invasive species came from, why they're an issue, and what can be done to solve them, to solve that problem. So, there we go. So first off, definitions, very important with this. What is a native species? You have to know what a native species is to know what an invasive species is. And there we go. Definitionally, a native species is a species that is growing in its natural habitat where it has significant and essential relationships with other organisms in that place. That means that bugs are eating it, birds are using the seed, fungus is attacking it, it has disease to add pressure to it. The relationships are extremely critical here. And now, what makes a species invasive? Number one, it's non-native to the ecosystem, so it doesn't match the previous definition. And number two, it causes harm, either to human health, economy, and or the environment. And not every species that is not native to an ecosystem is invasive. So, I mean, according to the DNR, 25% of all species in the state are non-native to Indiana. That does not mean 25% of the species are invasive. So that's very important to keep in mind. That harm aspect is critical when determining if something is invasive or not. So now for a couple of examples of invasive plants. I focus mostly on the plant side of things because if you take out the plants, a lot of the other stuff that relies on those plants, you know, other invasive insects, birds, whatever, they struggle to survive. So hitting at the base of the food chain does a lot of work. So first up though, garlic mustard, everybody loves it. Everybody, we see it everywhere. And it was introduced for herbal and medicinal uses in the 1860s. And that's a critical part, introduction. We introduced this. This is something that we brought here and we wanted to use it for something. This was a commonly used tool over in Europe or in Asia. That's a common thing that you'll see with a lot of these species. You know, we're having soil erosion problems, okay? Plant honeysuckle. We're having, we want a fence that we don't have to maintain. Okay, plant Rosa multiflora rose. And so they just brought those same tools that they were already using over and planted them here without really understanding the ecological impacts and how quickly they get spread. But back to garlic mustard, they invade forest understories and can very quickly spread, and they are allelopathic, which means they release chemicals into the soil that prevent either germination, nutrient uptake, or directly attack the neighboring plants around them. In this case, the allelopathic chemicals that garlic mustard releases attack the fungal networks that other plants use to uptake nutrients. So when they're growing at full speed, their neighboring plants are struggling to shoot up as quickly, so they get an automatic advantage. And then they're biennial. They take 2 years to produce seed. Year one, you'll see over here on the left, they'll have what's called a basal rosette. It'll be up to about dinner plate sized, and then 6 to 9 inches at the absolute most. And they'll stay low for that whole first year, and then the second year, they'll shoot up to that 2 or 3 foot tall spike with bright yellow flowers that we all see in the forests. Ooh. Next up, Asian bush honeysuckle, once again, introduced as an ornamental for wildlife coverage and erosion control. They invade forest understories and they grow in really, really dense populations that can almost completely stop or do completely stop forest succession. And what that means is when those maples or those hickories or those oaks eventually fall over and die, they will not have saplings to replace them. And we're at risk of losing our forests to infestations like this. It was brought here because it looks nice, and unfortunately, it had so much more impact than anyone could have ever possibly thought. So drive down the road in the spring, and you will see over here on the left, you'll see on the left all of these bright green new leaves with bright white, pink, sometimes purplish flowers, and that's all honeysuckle. It's one of the first things you'll see in the spring in mass, so think early April to mid-April, that's when it all really starts coming out. And then in the fall, it's got these very conspicuous bright red berries, also very noticeable. It's also one of the last things to stay green in the fall, so it's very conspicuous and it's got a long growing season. So that's why it's here, because I mean, the flowers are beautiful, the fruit is beautiful. That's why it's here. Next up, roundleaf bittersweet. Once again, introduced in the 1860s as an ornamental, and the fruited stems were cut in the fall, and they were actually put into wreaths. So if you go to Hobby Lobby or Walmart and look at the fake wreaths, they still have fake bittersweet in those. So that's why these are here, and of course, cutting those, bringing the berries to your house, the birds eat the berries off the wreath that get spread. That's why it spreads so quickly. They invade forest floors and can climb trees all the way up to the canopy and shade out other vegetation that it's growing on. And they spread via really aggressive rhizome growth and prolific seed proliferation. And a rhizome is a stem under the ground growing horizontally, just barely under the soil, and then at each node it sends up shoots. So it can spread very quickly. So on the left here, this is a tree that has been girdled by a roundleaf bittersweet. About 90% of a tree's mass is actually dead. The only living part is the outer inch and a half. That's where all the vascular tissue is. So you can imagine this vine choking that outer part of the tree, and it can't get the nutrients all the way up that it needs to, or all the way down to the roots that it needs to. So over time, the tree just exhausts itself and starves itself. And this is what bittersweet kind of starts out looking like on the right. It's a relatively inconspicuous vine, but you see it absolutely everywhere once you start seeing it. This picture was in Rutten Village in South Bend with Smith, the St. Joe and Marshall County SICIM. And this was the mother bittersweet, and every tree for 150 foot had bittersweet on it. In any direction, you could walk anywhere and find bittersweet. And this was by far the largest one that we found on site. Common reed. This one is a little bit unique because in the late 1700s and early 1800s, it's thought that it was introduced from the soil dumped out of ship ballasts. So it was not purposely introduced. So all these shipping vessels coming from Europe, they would fill up their ballasts with water or soil from the shoreline to help weigh them down correctly. And then when they got to their destination, they'd empty their ballasts. And it's thought that some seed or a piece of root material or something got into those ballasts and ended up, I believe it was Boston, and it has spread ever since. They invade wetlands and grow in very dense populations, and they completely outcompete most other species. And they spread almost entirely via rhizome. They can spread via seed, but once a population is established, it's almost all rhizome growth. So on the left here, this is actually a stem that has fallen over and then rerooted at the node. So every single node can do that on these, so they can reroot very quickly. And then on the right, this is an example of rhizome growth. So you can see all of these shoots coming up are in a straight line, and that's them shooting up from the rhizome. Come on, there we go. Next up, burning bush. Once again, it's beautiful, right? Late fall, the bright red color, that's why it's here. Once again, 1860s, introduced as an ornamental landscaping plant, and they invade disturbed habitats, forest edges, and can penetrate into undisturbed forests. A lot of the same stuff as honeysuckle or privet or Japanese barberry. they all kind of do the same deal. And they form very dense thickets, and they can stop forest succession as well. These ones are primarily spread through birds eating seeds, because over here on the right, every single burning bush puts out tens of thousands of seeds. And if you've got one burning bush, go look around the base of any trees nearby, you will probably see a burning bush shoot somewhere. And on the left, that is every drive-through in America. You see burning bush absolutely everywhere. It's still legal to sell, it's still legal to plant, and it's very prolific in landscaping even today. And finally, this is a big one right now. Tree of Heaven, introduced in the 1700s as a landscaping plant, and this one is uniquely difficult to manage because they, if you cut it down, they say that you just make it angry. You'll have 1,000 new trees in a couple months rather than the one that you just cut down. So you have to manage this one very carefully. SICIM.info has more information on managing this tree, and the science is always updating on this, so check there if you want the most up-to-date information. And much like garlic mustard, they produce allelopathic chemicals that prevent the germination this time of neighboring plants. And to top it all off, it's the host plant of the spotted lanternfly, which is a big topic of conversation right now. So it's kind of a double hitter. They grow really well in urban environments. So over here on the left, you can see this is just in someone's backyard. This is really common. I'm from South Bend, and the whole south side of South Bend is filled with this stuff because that's where all the Studebaker factories closed down. And it was all these abandoned industrial sites for 60 years. And we've got 80-foot tall tree of heaven in St. Joseph County everywhere because that's exactly where this stuff likes to grow. On the right, we've got the seed pods of tree of heaven, and tree of heaven has male and female trees, so only the female trees will have these, and these are called samaras. They're the same structures as maple trees have with their helicopters, and it's just to help push that seed further away. And a lot of people struggle in identifying tree of heaven, specifically with leaves, and they're often confused with staghorn sumac and black walnut. Those are the two that I hear most commonly. So up top we have a staghorn sumac, and on the bottom we have a tree of heaven. And this is true for both sumac and black walnut. The leaves are fully toothed on the entire edge, so they're leaflets. This is actually one whole leaf for both of these, and these are little leaflets. So every leaflet is fully toothed on black walnut and staghorn sumac, whereas on tree of heaven, it's just got this one, sometimes two, thumb right at the base of the leaf. And that's a good way to identify it. And something to keep in mind, we introduced this stuff. This is an us problem, and it's going to have to be an us solution. It's going to be a big job. I mean, we've got 250 years of damage behind us, so this is not something that will be fixed in a 5-year management project. It's not going to be fixed in my lifetime, and it's going to require us to kind of change how we see our relationship to the land. And we're going to have to change how our neighbors think about the land and change how our kids think about the land. So it's really important that we all start changing how we interact with the world in order to manage this correctly. So 85% of invasive species in the States are landscaping escapees. 14% are agriculture escapees, which leaves 1% as accidental introductions. So this is something that we have to fix. So what can you do? Educate yourself. There's so much information. You will always have more information to learn. And then report invasive species. My organization, SICIM, we have a resources and landowner toolkit page on our website, sicim.info. And that is constantly being updated with the most up-to-date science and most up-to-date best practices. So if you want to do an afternoon or two of reading, go spend an afternoon scrolling through there. There's a lot of interesting stuff. Volunteer at local weed wrangles. Weed wrangles or weed management programs or whatever it's called. You can go to learn to identify what invasive species are, learn how to manage those species, and then you'll connect with local resources. And that's the critical thing, local resources. This is not something that Washington, D.C. is going to be able to regulate away. It's not something that Indianapolis is going to be able to regulate away. It's something that our own local communities have to fix for themselves. Obviously, with help along the way, but the communities themselves need to care. And then report invasive species to your local SISMA, Purdue Extension. I need to put DNR on here as well, or other local resources. And I really like having people use EDD maps to report invasive species. Now, what's EDD maps, I hear you ask? It's a really, really great citizen reporting website where you can report plants, insects, fungi and diseases, or wildlife. So when you go to the website, you'll click report sightings and then you'll be brought here. And since I'm usually working with plants, I'll click plants. And this map, for example, is a map of garlic mustard reports in northern Indiana. And the size of the circle is just how many reports in an area. Red is a positive report, yellow is a treated report, so we are actively managing this. Green is eradicated. Notice you don't see any green on here. Garlic mustard is a pain. And blue is negative. We went to the site, didn't find any there. And this is really useful for a lot of organizations just to see, number one, where is work being done? And number two, where are active populations of these plants? And the next thing you can do is shift to native landscaping. Being that so many of our invasive plants are from our landscaping, the more we can shift to the plants that are actually supposed to grow here, the better we'll be able to, number one, learn about where we live, and number two, protect it. So if you remove any invasive species from your landscaping, you're doing great. I always shoot for 70%. If you like your rose bushes, or if your mom really likes her rose bushes, you can keep your rose bush. If you just have another section that is native, it's really good. Find local native nurseries to purchase from, because not only do you want native plants, you want the same ecotype of your native plants. So an ecotype is the plant, so say, let's say Black-Eyed Susan. Black-Eyed Susans from Minnesota have a different growing period, and they have different temperature requirements and capabilities to handle than ones from down here. So if you buy from a native nursery that sources its seed from down here, those plants will do better down here. Avoid commercial wildflower seed mixes like the ones you'll find at Walmart or Menards or Home Depot. A lot of these are filled with cultivars. Once again, going back to Black-Eyed Susans. And almost every single one of these, they have a cultivar of Black-Eyed Susan that produces no pollen. So, and what that does is it keeps the flower blooming longer, but it provides no benefit at all. And then if possible, commit an unused section of your property to be wildlife habitat. We take up a lot of space, and if there's any part that you can leave to nature, it does a lot. A lot of animals require standing flower heads or leaves to be left over winter. And if you can do that on any part of your property, you're doing a lot of good. And then inform others what you're doing and why. When I put my little prairie in at home, I got code enforcement called on me. And rather than get mad at them, rather than scream and fight, I invited the entire code enforcement agency over to my house, and I taught them what they were looking at. And I taught them how to recognize other ones, because it's a growing movement. More people are learning what is supposed to be growing here. Indiana is a really amazing place, and I think having a prairie of plants that are from here is a lot more interesting than Kentucky bluegrass. So I encourage you to educate your fellows around you as well. And just as an example, so this is one of my friend's houses in South Bend. When he bought this, it was just lawn, and it's a small little house. This is his garage back here. Really small, not a lot of storage space, so he had to have a lawnmower as well, and it was just a pain. And so he decided to switch over to native gardening, and this is what his yard looks like now. It's just filled with plants, and I was just over there just before Christmas, and there were juncos absolutely everywhere in his front yard. These little fat gray birds, and they are so, they migrate this far south only for a little while, and they were absolutely everywhere in his yard. So, and I think that is so much more interesting and so much healthier of a yard than what was there before. So, with that, thank you, and if you have any questions, please let me know. You can reach me at nwregion@sicim.info, and then go to sicim.info for a whole bunch of more information. I also do landowner surveys for free on there, so you can request a survey on the website.
Great.
AJ,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry.
Would it be okay if in a follow-up email, I include this recording to the full email list and like have your actual email so people can reach out to you?
Absolutely.
Okay, and we are short on time, so is it
Sorry.
okay if you have questions, reach out to AJ?
Yep.
That's okay.
Sorry, I ran a little over.
No, that was wonderful, thank you so much.